Aha. I mean, that literally was the words that were echoing in my head as I had this conversation with this week's guest. Hey, everyone, welcome back to Drop Your Noise. If you are new to the show, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Make sure you hit that follow button so that you stay informed when we drop one of the next episodes. So this week, I was talking with a dear friend of mine, Annie. I've been wanting her to be on my podcast since the moment I met her. Every time I'm in a conversation with her, she blows my mind. She sees things that I don't ordinarily see. And what fascinates me in all of that, because I have a chip on my shoulder about writing, is I always admire individuals who are able to capture our voices, put it into words, into a way that when you're reading it, you feel like you're with that person. And Annie's experience and expertise captures just that. Now, if you know me, you know that when the language gets really complicated or when a situation or an idea gets really complex, I glaze out. I just glaze out. I No matter how much you talk to me, I won't understand it. But my ahas in this episode was she broke it down into very easy, understandable way on how to see our voice and how we could really is pay attention to when we are using AI and does it really capture our voice? This episode was a masterclass for me, and I really hope it is for you too. Let me know after you hear this conversation, what are your thoughts about it? Enjoy. Why did you choose this path that you're doing now?
I think awareness of that for work, I really need to feel stimulated. And I didn't think that law would be that interesting. It seemed rather dry. I could be wrong. From what I understand, I think the experience of going to law school is really fun and people really enjoy it and it's super intellectual, which I would like. But the actual work, I think, would be pretty cut and dry. And I do struggle a little bit with being detail oriented. So I think if I'm not super interested in something, it's hard for me to do a good job, which has caused issues in the past.
Yeah. Issues.
Yeah.
So I like what you do. I mean, I wish I could do what you do, which is very interesting because you were saying about, not looking at details from the law perspective. Funnily enough, I struggle with writing on writing. I may have published 2 books, I did. And when I publish them, I've always written short books purposely because it's what I could handle.
Yeah.
And when it's a long book, I would be overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, maybe not. But also when I write, I'm like super judgmental. I'm like, I use the same words and I'm a little bit bored and I don't know how to be creative. And when I read your stuff, when you put out there, I'm like, I wish I could write like that. I have a bit of loving envy for you.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Now, how did you get into the creative writing of it? How do you?
Yeah, I guess.
What do you look for?
Yeah, I think that writing and reading's just always been a thread for me. And to be honest, I never really was thought that I would be kind of I was kind of interested in the idea of communications, but I really came at it from writing, and I studied English literature. I've always read a lot. It seemed kind of like the natural thing to study. I did English and history. And then I was living in Vancouver, and it was like 2006 to 2008. So it wasn't really great economy-wise, but I got into social media because some of my friends knew I could write, and they were like, hey, can you do some of my content, which was like a really new thing then. So there was kind of like Twitter, and there was Facebook. Instagram wasn't a thing then. And so I started doing that, and then it just kind of accelerated, and I thought, why don't I move to Dubai where there's more opportunities and I can do this on a bigger scale and kind of play around with it. So it sort of evolved naturally, which I think happens a lot with people's careers. Like you have an idea of where you might go, and then I mean, I did like stand up comedy and writing courses and stuff in Vancouver. I mean, I didn't do too much stand up comedy, but I was really into that
Talk
scene.
about learning something about your friend on a podcast.
Yeah, I know. And now I feel like, oh, I have to be funny now. But yeah, I haven't done it in a long time, but I was really into that idea of like humor and comedy because Canadians can be quite serious. But we also have a really, really good comedian. So it's kind of a catch-22.
So but do you really? So when I look at you do copywriting for individuals. You do it for thought leaders, right? And I
Yeah.
always think that's interesting because you need to understand that person pretty well to write or
Yeah.
support them to write for them, right?
Yeah. And then I think that, yeah, I mean, now there's like AI and stuff, which we can probably get into later. And I don't really think that's helping anybody's writing, really. Even writers, I don't think it's really helping. I think it's helping people who maybe don't know how to write at all, and that's good. But when you get to a certain level, I think we need to make sure that we do know how to write and how to think about writing and how to think about voice. But yeah, I mean, when you're writing for someone, you need to capture their voice, and that can be, it's a little bit of like testing. And I do a lot of interviewing of people. I record people a lot, so I can go back and kind of like look at what your words they're using, or to get an idea of their tone. So
But okay, so you brought onto one of the key things, which is voice.
right,
What
voice.
does that really mean?
I mean, I think a lot of these terms get kind of bandied about and diluted a lot. Like one of my sort of pet peeves is when people say storytelling, because no one really knows what that means. And what does it
Yeah,
mean
you're
for
gonna
a
have to break
company to
these
say,
down, girl.
yeah, yeah. Like what does a company mean when they're like, we're storytellers? It's like, really, are you? What story are you telling? But I mean, voice in the sort of literary sense of the word is about how you use diction, so different words, and how you use all these sort of tools of writing to create this unique sounding, personal, very personal way of writing. So that
Okay.
when someone reads it, they're like, oh, that's that person. So if you think of like really good authors, like, I don't know, like Jane Austen, if you read like a paragraph of her work and you hadn't read the whole book, you would get an idea of what her voice is like. Or someone more contemporary, even like, I don't know, I can't think of an example right now. Oprah, maybe.
Okay.
If you read a paragraph, you would be like, oh, that's Oprah's voice.
But can you tell that because you've studied it? Because if I would not be able to tell if you'd asked me to describe Oprah's voice, I don't think I would be able to. Because everybody's trying to sound like Oprah these days. I'll
Yeah,
just lay it out
that
there.
gives you kind of a clue because you're like, everyone's trying to sound like Oprah. What do you think they're trying to do?
Self-developing questions, thought, insightful thinking.
Yeah, like the way she writes is very reflective, and she sort of, I think she goes back to memories, and she uses very like common, like lay language. She wouldn't use a lot of big words, which is how she is in person too. Like I think she's got where she is because she's relatable, and she's like able to take these big concepts and kind of like bring them down to everyday language and explain them to people really well and ask people about
Yeah.
them.
I
So,
mean, look, but the way you break it down, I would have never thought. And then as you're breaking it down, I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So I'm like now I'm thinking about my style. I'm going to be very selfish. I'm thinking about my style because I like to use the word dot, dot, dot because I
right.
use pause, right?
Yeah.
So I've realized that I'm very much so I did ask ChatGPT, don't kill me. Not ChatGPT, but Gemini. And I'm like, okay, what's my style of writing?
Oh, okay.
And
Cool.
they called it staccato. And I was like, oh, really? There's
Oh,
such a thing as staccato writing or a staccato voice. So that's what I'm asking you. I'm like, what does
okay.
that really mean on that voice? And then now you broke down Oprah, and I'm like, oh, yeah, she does do that. And she does do that. And it
Yeah.
kind of makes me reflect on just by myself. I'm like reflecting on, oh, so there is a signature in your writing, that in your way of writing, that you don't even realize, or maybe I just have.
Yeah. It's a bunch of things going on, like levers that you can pull that you don't even realize you're pulling. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like what people talk about when they talk about personal brand as well, to kind of, if we brought it back to that. I
Mhm.
mean, there's personal brand, but most of the people don't understand what goes into creating that. And that is like how you write, what words you use. Staccato actually means like quick. So it's from like music. Staccato is like when they play a
Yeah.
really quick part of a song. So, that maybe you use small words and like you kind of get your thoughts down on the page quickly. Like that's part of your personal brand, because you're very like, you like to talk, you like to discuss things, and you do speak quite quickly. So then your voice is part of your personal brand, along with, like your overall thoughts. But it's about like how you get those across and how you communicate it and how it lands for people.
No wonder I have a problem with AI. But we're gonna get talk about that one in a
Right.
bit.
Yeah.
Too. When you talk about, so you got me thinking about something about this voice, and then there's my gripe. I'm gonna come out with my gripe here, which
Okay.
is I am going through this phase where I just don't want to be on social media because I see a lot of AI. I've
Yeah.
heard this before. I've heard this before. I'm over this. Or all
Yeah.
those emojis that are like there. And I'm going to say it out loud. Every woman is writing about. And I'm just like, if I have to hear another conversation about menopause at this point, I'm a little bit over it, for example. Or
Yeah.
if I have to hear another conversation about imposter syndrome, I'm like, okay, not because they're not relevant, but because it sounds the same. And
Yeah.
everyone's trying to sound like that thought leader, but it's the same idea. So
Right. Yeah.
um, help me get out of this. Why do we do this? And what
Yeah.
could we do differently?
I do know why people are doing it, but what I would ask you is like, is there anyone that kind of cuts through the noise? Is there anyone where you're like, whoa, that's different? Or has it all seemed sort of samey? Yeah. I mean, I think what we've fallen into is basically there's a few things. And one of the reasons that I liked, and I still do really like LinkedIn, and it's my preferred platform, is because
Yeah.
I feel like it lends itself to kind of more wordy people and kind of like more critical thinking. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, culture in general is like, I think what people think they should do is have something that they know people will engage with, that's
Hmm.
sort of safe and tested, and then they'll get like some basic engagement and like get rewarded by the algorithm. That's why things seem like really homogenous. Um, but it's kind of a lazy way to do it. And I think the only way around that is to really add your personality and voice. So that's using different words, or that's why I think video will become really big on LinkedIn, because it's a way to sort of sound less homogenous and you can kind of be yourself more, which people want to connect with. They want to connect with original thoughts, and even, um, yeah, it's about being something different. But right now we're sort of being rewarded for being the same or saying the same things.
And that's I can probably agree with that, because over the last 2 months, I mean, I've heard the word AI slop
Yeah.
quite a bit. I'm looking into it, and then I guess from what I gather, it's same information that's been put into AI, and it's got that you can see that it's all AI. It's not
Yeah.
just M dashes, certain words, or the way it's written. I almost think that AI has its own personality, personal style, and it
Yeah.
keeps trying to project itself in your own writing.
Mm.
I found, so that's one thing I noticed, and the second thing I noticed is the language phrase. I've become very aware that how language really matters as we go forward.
Yeah.
And so if we don't put that personal spin in there, if you don't have that high level of awareness of yourself, you
Mm.
are going to keep doing these things. Am I off, or what are your thoughts?
No, I think you're right. It's about standing out and being different. But the problem is that no one's really taught to write anymore. So we're sort of relying on this tool, and it'll probably get better and be able to sort of like pick up your voice more, which I
Mhm.
don't really think is a good thing. But um,
Why do you not think it's a good thing?
I mean, I think that there's something about being able to put your thoughts in words and really think about it that we're losing. And it's about then not being able to communicate very well what you actually think and feel, which maybe you can get away with it with writing. But if you go into like a board meeting and you can't articulate what you're saying and you can't think well, then you're going to suffer.
I think you're hitting on, for me, you're hitting on something that I don't know if I think I feel, sometimes I feel something like I will use AI because I have a chip on my shoulder about my English.
Right.
I learned
Yeah.
English in the Caribbean. The level of English wasn't that high, and at home we spoke English more than we wrote English. We did
Right.
read,
Yeah.
and your mother would correct you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so for me, when AI kind of came out, I felt to me like another Grammarly at first. It's like, oh, I use this to make the sentence sound better, feel better. But it gave me confidence. Like, over time, it would build confidence. So in that respect, I
Yes.
understand it. But what's happening now is the exact thing you're saying, which is while I see it on paper, and then when I have to go or meet somebody, what I actually put out, and that was I think last year I noticed that
Yeah.
they're not the same. So it's almost felt
Right.
like the way I project myself on LinkedIn and when people meet me are two different
Okay.
ways.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, there's a few good points there. Like, I think also AI is so good for, and writing is like so good in democratizing writing, because it has been something that, like, is of, like, I'm a native English speaker, so I have an advantage, and I studied it. And that feels unfair sometimes, because if we're using the internet and writing, then
Mhm.
some people are just held back because of the fact that they don't speak English. And moving to Dubai is super humbling, because most people in Dubai speak like three languages. Like everyone in India speaks like three languages, and I speak English and some French, which isn't even really good. Like, it's just, that's just the way the world's structured. So I think it's good for some people that they've been able to use it to kind of like express themselves or build a personal brand. I think that's great. Um, but what you're talking about is this kind of like disconnect where you're feeling maybe that it doesn't really represent you.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like this kind of outward Kirti that's writing, but then you're like, is that really me? And I
Yeah.
think that does happen. It can happen on LinkedIn as well, because most people on LinkedIn aren't really being authentic. They're being like their work self, because you do have to have kind of a persona for work. You're not going to go, well, most people don't roll into work and talk to people at work like they talk to people when they're like
Yeah.
drinking with them on a Friday night.
I wouldn't dare to talk about the way you and I speak.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not really authentic, like that word authentic. It's not like authentically who you are. And it really comes down to like what your objectives are. If your objectives to be like, hey, I want to write something because I want my boss to know that I like the company and I'm kind of into what we're doing, and maybe I'll get a promotion, go for it. But like, you don't have to really just be who you are at work. But if you're working, like, let's go back to life coaches, that's probably why there's this pressure to be a bit more kind of vulnerable, like quote unquote vulnerable on
Yeah.
social media because they want people to connect with them. But that's also a trap that can feel samey if not done right. Like, I think people have kind of like fatigue of opening up Instagram and seeing people crying. It's just
Yeah.
like, I feel like, oh, okay, they're just doing it for attention. And that's kind of a sad thing to feel as a human. Like, if you see someone crying, you're like programmed to feel empathy. That's why we cry.
But then I feel, I mean, maybe I'm more harsh than you, but I call it empathy manipulation.
Yeah.
It's like you're manipulating people
Yeah.
for a false empathy, but to the point where internally I feel more distrusting, because I'm now not distrusting, cynical. I think that's the word,
Yeah.
cynical.
I think cynicism is a big thing. And
Tell me about that.
I feel like, well, I just think if we're all sort of desensitized and having these sort of alter egos on Instagram, and you feel like what's in front of you isn't really accurate or authentic, then of course you become cynical. And then when you actually are presented with something real, then maybe you would disregard it really quickly and perhaps miss a connection, or there's a danger in becoming jaded. Because with jaded, it's almost like when you buy into stereotypes, it's like you don't really look beneath. You just kind of think a certain thing and go about your day. You're not really like looking for what's accurate because you've sort of already made up your mind.
You know, that's actually quite true. Because I look at, I like LinkedIn. It's not that I enjoy it more than any of the other platforms. I like it because, first of all, you get to meet people from a professional level in a certain way, when done right. Let me put it this way. They know how to put their signature, and I think of it as a signature. You know how to put your little signature in your writing that you can say this is you.
Yeah.
And then you get a feel for the person without actually having to meet them that often. So I've made some pretty good connections based on the conversations I've had on their posts that they had.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So I can see that when that cynicism comes in from my side, it's like, oh, here we go. This person is just here because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, but give them a chance, or how do I engage with their post? And so I find myself becoming a little more cynical to that degree because of all this AI slop.
I think so. And I think also like the idea behind a personal brand is also kind of manipulative. Like, to think about like, who do I want to be and how's it going to help me? And a lot of people do it to make money. Like, we all have to make money. Whether you're getting clients or you want a promotion, of course. But I also think that on the flip side of that, the internet has been really good in general, and social media has been really good at connecting you with people that you wouldn't have to. And it's been great for, like, I remember, or I love reading about examples where there's, especially like goth teenagers who grew up in these crappy little towns and didn't have any friends and were bullied, and they meet their community online. And I think LinkedIn's been such a good thing for me as well in Dubai. And like when I first moved here, Twitter was like that. Twitter was really like, we would have tweet ups, and I mean, this was like
tweet ups
in 2010, where you would just go and meet people from Twitter. And I always think, even because I worked in social media since 2008, the most powerful parts of social media are when you can take it offline. That's when it really becomes something powerful, because it's like you bring an online experience and an offline experience together. So you're actually meeting in real life. That's when the power happens.
I never thought. It's so true, actually.
Yeah,
it's fabulous. But then that doesn't require being conversational also to some degree in your personal branding in general, or because it's a social platform?
Yeah, I mean, it is social, and I think that's what why the AI slop fails, is because it's not engaging. Because it's not like when you talked before about manipulation, actually any art or something that is made for someone to consume is about manipulating people on an emotional level. So like when you watch a movie, you're actually being manipulated. Like that's some of the theories behind this, is that you're actually being manipulated to like have an emotional reaction or care about these characters. And that's the same as what people are doing. It's just, if you kind of do it quickly with AI, maybe you're not thinking about what you want your audience to do. You know, like when I write content, it's like, I want them to learn something. I want them to be able to be like, oh, I never thought about that before, and have like a reaction. Or sometimes I want them to like want to be curious and find out more and then like read more of my stuff. You know, it's really important to always, I think about your objective when you're writing, which maybe is I also have to be careful sometimes because I'm like, I think when you work in communications, you just feel like a lot of people are aware of this stuff. And it's like, because it's like second nature. And a lot of my friends work in media. And so it can be a bit of an echo chamber. But when you work with people who are like, some of my clients are like, you know, like senior leaders in industries, like tech industries. And, you know, the way they move through the world is completely different. So they're not as aware of like how to connect with people or like what's important in writing, or, you know, some of them are so brilliant and they're like amazing at sort of figuring out why things work or what we should be thinking about next, but they don't know how to put it in language that people would understand, which is a big thing.
I have that with workshops when you give them, and then you have to ask them to explain something. They're just so tech bound.
Yeah.
They don't know how to translate it. So I get
like
that
explain it like you're explaining it to a child, you know, and then that usually helps. But you can kind of lose your way with writing really easily, I think, if you don't sort of come back to like, what do I want out of this? What do I want my audience to do with this information?
I mean, it sounds like so again, it goes down to this thing of signature. You've mentioned this a few times, the word personal branding. I get, you know, I get very lost in that. I've been asked to give a workshop on it, and my first reaction was like, should I be giving something about this, you know? And they obviously felt something that they're going to ask for it, so I was like, okay, well, give me a second. And I got me thinking, and you're mentioning it 2-3 times, so I don't know, maybe I'm picking up on it because it's in my mind. Personal branding. What is it really? I mean,
okay.
What is it really? Because you're saying, okay, you do copy, you know, you'll probably do copywriting, you curate, you support thought leaders to get their voices out there. You really work in depth with voice. To me, that sounds personal branding.
Yeah.
So, but then if I meet somebody who doesn't do all this, they do personal branding. I'm like, what does that really signify?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I actually don't really like the term personal branding because for me, it has connotations of being like, you should cut your hair like this and then you should wear this outfit and like, you know, and I'm like, I am really not that person. And I am like the person who kind of sits behind the screen and likes to write and likes to, you know, read books basically. But I prefer, whenever I teach a session on like personal branding or like using LinkedIn better, I always like to differentiate between thought leadership and personal branding, because I think that kind of brings it back and makes it a little bit like more easier to understand.
What's the difference?
So, yes, I will explain.
Thank you.
Basically, I think of it as a Venn diagram. So there's personal branding and then there's thought leadership. And then in the middle, it's kind of where they cross over. So personal branding is more surface level. So I like to think of it in terms of like an Instagram where you're like, you know, sharing your day and you maybe like share a bit about what you do, but it's not really necessarily going into like your opinions about things and how you are sort of an industry leader. And thought leadership really lends itself more to like business to business marketing where you're like selling to like very specific people. You're not selling en masse. So it's not really about like making everybody aware of what you do. It's like showing people, because they're usually like really huge deals, like selling an airplane, you know, it's like can be billions often. So it's like you're showing a really select people, like a really select set of people that you understand their problems. And you're the person who like knows enough about their industry and their challenges to buy from.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of people that are thought leaders, it's like they're leading the industry because they just like go home and geek out about this stuff and like they have opinions. It's usually about having an opinion about something. It's about having a point of view. It's about it being able to articulate that. And you become a resource. Like you're like when people think of your industry, they're like, oh yeah, like Kirti, she knows about like senior level communications. Like listen to what she said last week. And if you think of people that are thought leaders, it becomes really clear. So often, like at the beginning of a workshop, I'll put up two pictures. So I often, what did I put up lately? I'll put up like, say, Richard Branson and Justin Bieber. Like, which one of those do you think is a thought leader?
Richard Branson. Well, I would say my first intuitive side would be Richard Branson.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
he has, maybe because I think of a professional hat, what he's done. He stood out in his brand, not in what his products were, but his idea was, you know, make it freeing, making it liberal. Don't overthink your entrepreneurship. Those things that, you know, he has a point of view. He does have a point of view.
Yeah.
When I think of Justin Bieber, I think of an artist. His point of view is probably in his music, but yeah, I wouldn't know what his thought leadership is about. I just think he's an artist and he's producing music, you know, probably fabulous music, I guess.
Yeah. So he's like more of an entertainer and more about mass appeal, whereas Richard Branson would be like a business thought leader. He's written books about entrepreneurship. He's quite vocal about, he mentors entrepreneurs and he talks about it. We could also say like which one of these is a business thought leader, you know, Justin Bieber or Richard Branson. But the whole idea with LinkedIn originally, and it's probably wavering a little bit, was to make people into thought leaders. So ideally the algorithm is supposed to encourage and promote content from people that have a point of view for a niche audience. It's not about like, hey, here's a picture of my dog. Everyone likes dogs. Well, most people do, unless they're a cat person. But like,
person too.
You're going to get a lot of likes if you put up a picture of a dog on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to not get as many likes if you put up your point of view on why companies should use a certain software in their transition to AI. But you'll get like really deep engagement from people who need a solution like that and are like, oh, you know what you're talking about. Can you help me? I need to do this at work. That's how LinkedIn is supposed to work. And that's why I always say, like, what we want to do is make you into a thought leader. But you can also be like a like very impactful thought leader with scale, like Stephen Bartlett. LinkedIn is one of his main platforms.
Channels, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he's problematic and everything, but I think he's done a pretty big job or good job of using LinkedIn to build his reputation as a thought leader and his personal brand, because now he's really tipped over to kind of being more in the mainstream. So I would say, you know, that's where that Venn diagram comes back: personal brand and thought leader.
You know, you are one of you've explained it to me that I finally got it. I could not for the life of me understand what people were trying to get at, because it almost felt like when I would meet people and they would be like, I did this, and I'd be like, okay, but it sounds the same, you know, thought leadership. And in my head, I also thought of thought leadership as have an opinion, bring it forward. But then when people talk about personal branding, they'll be like, and then we'll do your thought leadership. And I go, okay, have I got this wrong? Is it just me?
Yeah,
And
it's
then
really
indeed,
confusing.
it's about the here and say what put it yourself out there. And then going to go back to this word, you said voice. And then I always think about it from a woman's perspective. Again, I go back to this. Quite often, I don't know if you feel that way. I feel like women miss out on this opportunity
Yeah.
of not putting their opinions or their thought leadership out there. I mean, you've given me 3 examples, and it just so happens to be all male.
I know. I was thinking about that, and when I do my workshops, I always put women in. Like, I feel really strongly about that. But yeah, you hit on one of my favorite topics, which is
Tell me.
yeah. So,
all right. So tell me, was it a masterclass or not? What did you get out of it? What is your key takeaway from this week's episode? All right. Also, did you notice that at the end, we were going into the next subject? Yes, there is a part 2 to this conversation, which I will be releasing at the end of the month. It was great to have this conversation, and I'm so happy I could share it with you. And if you like it, again, remember, please follow, please share it out. Share it to that one person who will really benefit from this. And also, do you know that by doing that, you're helping the podcast grow? Have a good one. Till the next one. Take care.